Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Friday Championship here on RCI TV. It is the second of our summer special championships. We had the Reigning Club International Series just a few weeks ago. That's all wrapped up and done. Killian Ryan Meenan, champion of that. But here we are for the second one, and it's the Friday Donington Special. 3 rounds at Donington Park across the next 3 weeks. And we'll have a different car available for each driver for every single round. Tonight is BMW round for round 1. My name is Ryan Gill. We have Mike Jones behind the camera, and joining me in the commentary box, it's the man who's joined me for so many commentary events over the past 12 months. It's the wonderful Jesse Lee.
Well, I got to say, Ryan, I definitely have missed commentating with you. It's nice to be back with you for some of the Friday championships, and a good evening and hello to everybody out there watching on RCI TV. It is the summer of Donington, I think is what I'm going to describe it as, and why not? One of the best tracks in the world, in my opinion, probably one of my favorite tracks, definitely top 3, and we get to see BMWs racing here tonight, next week at GTR, and the big thing for me, the big takeaway is that they voted on this. They wanted the BMW over the Porsche, and they had a say in what cars are used. We are basically Pop Idol, but for sim racing. I love it.
Yeah, we have 3 different cars over the course of the championship. BMW tonight, the Nissan for round 2, and then it will be the McLaren 720S for the final round of the season. And always interesting to see the selection of cars that, you know, we we eventually went with. I think BMW, Nissan, and McLaren were not the 3 I initially had in mind would make it through into the final 3 for the championship. I had a good idea that the McLaren would make it, and possibly the BMW. Did not expect the Nissan, a bit left field out of there. But, well, as this is one of the summer championships, everything is thrown out of whack a bit, and we like to have some fun. Also having some fun with us here tonight, you may have noticed, we're looking at Nathan McConnell right now in the number 23. We have the AM drivers in the top split here today, and well, that's mainly because there is only one split for this championship. We have the pros, the silvers, and the AMs all in one server. And Jesse, it's created exciting moments, you know, in a couple of past events where we've had 3 different skill classes within one server, but, well, across a 3-round mini championship, in which everyone's going to be using a different car each round, it's going to offer some new challenges, should we say.
Yeah, and just like voting for the cars, there was also a vote to combine all of the splits, and nearly unanimously they agreed to conjoin all of the splits together into just one, and it has created a field of more than 30 cars across 3 different skill levels. And mind you, they are all in the same car, just at different skill levels and abilities. And just look at them all. This might be, and I was trying to think, has Britcar, British GT, or BTCC ever had more than this amount of cars on this track? I can't think of a time where that ever would have been a thing. This is a lot of cars, 60-minute race. Traffic is going to come into play, and I think a lot of these faster drivers are looking for that challenge as well. It's going to be exciting.
I think there probably have been a couple of occasions in which this amount of cars have been represented. Obviously not GT3 or, should we say, touring car level. If anything, I'm thinking of the Ginetta Super Cup or the Ginetta GT5 classes, which typically do have big grids. But in the sense of GT3 cars, no. I'm pretty sure you're right with Donington has never had this amount of cars on one track. But, you know, Donington Park, it's always one in the debate for hosting major events. Obviously hosts a couple of top-tier motorcycle racing championships and has hosted a Formula One venue in the past. There's plenty of talks that always go on about Formula One potentially one day returning here, but it's not going to happen in the present. What we do have here, though, is British GT. And one of the most exciting races of the year is always Donington Park, and that has translated over very well into ACC. This is Andy Boardman as we enter the final minute of the free practice session. Up into 7th place, the number 69 at the moment for Grease Weasel Racing. And, well, Jesse, I mean, I would say that, you know, we're missing a lot of familiar names, which we are. But looking through the roster here, at least through the pro class drivers, plenty of names that we can still pick out from the regular, you know, Friday, Monday, or Saturday championships around here in RCI.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Of course, the summertime comes with a bit of a dry spell for sim racing. Of course, you try to get a little bit of a vacation in, a little bit of summer fun, and of course, sim racing is a lot more prolific in the colder months in the Northern Hemisphere. But rather, besides that, there are a lot of teams that have come and they have shown that they're going to be here the entire summer, and they are going to try and win as much as they can. And I mean, just looking at our pro field, of course, you have Savalainen, Ertan, Sider, Santos, Vining, Boardman, Junior McCall's in here as well, just to name a couple. And then you look at the silver field, it's pretty much the same thing. If there's one thing I will take away from this, you do end up seeing a significant portion of RCI staff that aren't either stewarding or broadcasting that do get to participate a bit more in the summertime because it is a little bit slower. So good for them. Not so good for them because if they mess up, we're gonna talk about it in depth. We're gonna go into a Formula One style analysis thing. We've got our pit box set up and all that for that. But practice is over. Qualifying is imminent for the first of 3 rounds, a mini championship here. And if you don't like Donington, well, first of all, what is wrong with you? And perhaps maybe watch a different series of ours then. But that is where we're going to be for the next 3 weeks. Ryan Gill and myself, we love this place. It's top 3 for me. I think it's really up there for you, Ryan, as well. It's probably my favorite British track. You'll never guess what my second favorite British track is. Because it's not the one you think. It's not one that you would think of.
The fact you've said British intrigues me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because
it's
you could have easily said English if it didn't include any of the circuits, or well, circuit in Scotland that is somewhat well known. But I'd like to think it is a circuit within England. I'd take a wild stab in the dark and say, is it Alton Park?
No, it's not. I do really enjoy Alton Park, however, but it is not Alton Park. It's in Hampshire, if it helps you.
Ah, interesting. Well, not what I would have expected, but
I do like Thruxton. Yeah, I don't the simplicity of that track.
It is a good circuit. It is a good circuit.
It's one of the circuits that hasn't been ruined. Qualifying starting here, 3 classes, all of them out at the same time. And you don't get to say this a lot at Donington, but finding real estate to set that quick lap might be at a premium here.
Yeah, Donington Park. Donington Park is not. It's not particularly kind in terms of traffic navigation and finding space on occasion. I mean, it is, in terms of lap time, it is the shortest circuit on the British GT calendar of the British GT DLC specifically. Obviously, Brands Hatch is a shorter lap time across the entire calendar, but of the 3 circuits added to British GT, Donington has the quickest lap time in the 27s. Both Snetterton and Alton are over the 130s. So Donington Park, deceiving in that sense. You would assume it is by far the largest venue, and it definitely is the crown jewel of the British GT DLC, but definitely shorter on the track side, and mostly because a lot of this circuit is taken flat out or at least at 50% throttle. And you can see Tom Bryant on his hot lap here at the moment, going through some of these corners up towards Coppice at the top, and now on to the back straight, back where the Dunlop Bridge used to be. Tom Bryant getting a bit out of shape on the exit, and it's very, very important to get a good exit here. Line yourself up for the foggy S's. Nice and quick through the chicane is how you have to be if you're going to set a very, very quick lap time. Short run down to the Melbourne hairpin. This is probably, I would say, a lot of people's least favourite part of the circuit, the Melbourne hairpin. A lot of debates on how that part of the track could be made better, but either way, up towards the final corner we go. And Tom Bryant, you've got to be careful here because the corner dips away as you come in towards the hairpin, back out onto the start-finish straight, the ultimate driving machine advertisement for BMW, which is, funny enough, the car that we have for the first round of the championship. And Tom Bryant will set the first lap, flying lap of the session, but he will be immediately beaten by some of the pro drivers, Ertan Santos and Rosendahl, going immediately quicker and Vining now as well.
Can we talk about what Tom Bryant's team name is real quick? Rai loves comics. You want to talk about that?
I mean, I don't like comic. Let's get that straight for a start. I don't like Comic Sans. Let's get that out of the way. I'm a professional designer. I do not like Comic Sans, but there has been a joke about my profile picture on Discord, courtesy of Mike Jones. So Tom Bryant has obviously decided to go with that. He did say to me pre-race, he said, "I hope you're on commentary duty here today because of my team name." So there you go, Tom Bryant. There's your shout out on the stream. I'm sure that's the last we'll see of Tom for the rest of the stream. But he's sitting in 7th at the moment in the silver class, Tom Bryant, so not doing too bad. Had a decent banker lap, but of course the qualifying session far from over. Almost 5 minutes down and 10 more still to go. This is Jason Clark, who is provisional pole in the AM class at the moment, the 334. And it's a good opportunity, this, isn't it, Jesse, for a few of the AM drivers to get a run-in out on the broadcast. We do always get asked the question, will the lower splits be streamed? And the unfortunate reality and the hard answer to that question is that A, we don't have enough staff to broadcast every split, and B, there's not always the interest in people viewing the other splits, which is something that me and Mike Jones have had a couple of discussions on. Seems quite unique to sim racing in particular.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange. You would never not tune out for an F3 race. I in fact love watching British F3, F2s, and all that as well. And there's just something about big names in sim racing that has the draw in comparison. But specifically for the AMs here, it's a win-win for them. Not only do we get to learn more about a lot of these up-and-coming AMs, we also get to see them interact with the faster drivers. And it's a win for them as the car in front of Ertan goes off. That's going to be a common mistake all day long. But for the AMs, it's a win-win simply because they get to share the track with these guys and gals, and they get to learn, go to school, if you will, on different techniques, ways to brake, braking points, where to enter turns, when to push, etc., and so forth. They're winning out here, and so are we, quite frankly, because we get to see them race. It's a rare treat for us, and in my personal opinion, there's nothing quite like watching AMs race. It's so very exciting as Savalainen goes to provisional pole after a few laps.
With the AMs, though, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that it's entirely possible we can see these drivers up in a higher class in a couple of seasons' time. Ooh, Nicholas Smith having to avoid a BMW going around the wrong way at turn 1. And that's something that we are likely to see at the race start, turn 1, Redgate. Not the easiest of corners down towards the first sequence here, and especially on the start where the tires are not in the optimal range, your brakes aren't as warm as you would like them to be. It can be a tricky corner to get right on the first occasion. We have Martin Thorpe going up into 2nd, that is, in the silver class, up onto the same row of the grid as the number 46, currently sitting in provisional pole. But to go back to my point about the AM drivers, Jesse, it's entirely possible we'll see them in higher classes over the next few months as well. There's drivers that are always doing well in the AM class that bump themselves up to silver, and the same is said of the silver drivers that bump themselves up to pro. And I mean, I've mentioned it I don't know how many times now, but Kilian Ryan Meenan and Tinko van der Velde, established pro drivers at this point in time that compete in esports event. I mean, 15 months ago, I was driving alongside them in the AM split. You know, it just shows how far you can come in what is a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy to think about Killy and Ryan Meenan, you know, and how far that they have come. And the most recent champion here at RCI, Killy and Ryan Meenan, in the pro category in the previous Summer Friday Championship. Part 1 of the Summer Friday Championship, Killy and Ryan Meenan won that thing. So you're very right indeed. That is certainly a possibility. And with this many cars, I always feel this way. The more cars you have, the more likely you are, if you can demonstrate that you are a consistent and quick driver, the more likely it is that you do get bumped up quicker. And that's sort of the Killian Ryan Meenan route. He entered a lot of big races and showed how quick he could be. And, you know, well, you know, they say the rest is history. But for any AM here, in fact, Clark was inside the top 10 there for a moment, but has been bumped down to 13th place, but still has a fairly significant gap, about half of a second over the next quickest AM and Allian Smith. And 5th place belongs to the 46, who has quite a gap of his own on the rest of the silver field.
Cam Prager up into 5th place overall is very impressive in the silver class. And it's kind of hard to call, isn't it, Jesse? Because with all of these drivers being in the same car, it does come down to skill level, but also car knowledge, and your ability to set up the car is very important in a single make series. But at the same time, they're not going to be using the same car every week, unlike they usually would be in a championship. They're going to be changing cars week by week, still staying at the same venue, of course. And that, I mean, I feel that's going to throw up the order every week. I get the feeling that, you know, the top 5 that we see here in the pro category, they're not going to be in this order come next week in the Nissan, or the final week in the McLaren. I feel like the whole order is just going to get mixed up a bit because of how different each car is and how each driver adapts differently to certain cars. There are some drivers that are fantastic at jumping in and out of different cars all the time. And then there are other drivers, we like to call them specialists, that they're very, very good at one car, but put them in something else, and a lot of that pace and consistency seems to go missing.
No, right, you are. It's very true. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I'm just looking down the 30-something car list, and there's only about 4 of these drivers that I know in the past year have driven this car. Not raced it competitively, folks, driven. And that is a bit of a problem for others, and it's a benefit to some others. But next week in the GTR, it's going to be completely different, like you said. You're going to have a completely different order, and if it's not a completely different order, you will go ahead and show me a surprise as the next guy, but it will be very different. And I've always felt, and this is to this day, it's more difficult for a driver to go from one car to another car than it is to go from one track to another track, because at least the car is consistent going from track to track most of the time. Keeping the track is great, but it is still a bigger wild card to change them up and put them in a different car. And it's a unique experience that almost never happens. Even in sim racing, how many championships do you folks know at home that make them get out of the car they signed up with or in, or even allows them to vote on a random car for several weeks in a row? That's kind of the uniqueness of this Friday Summertime Championship. This man here, Pedro Santos, leading them around. Ertan has gotten closer, but still about a quarter of a second off of the overall pace of Santos, and Savalainen now back in third, a quarter of a second back as well. Very close, in fact, from second all the way to about fifth or so position, as Pedro Santos trying to get a couple of more laps in. Actually might get two more, and will get two more laps in here.
Up by a tenth as well on his time as he comes out of the final corner. And it is going to be an improvement for Pedro Santos. It's 26.3.
And who knows how pivotal that's going to be coming down the stretch here. Savalainen always seems to be able to get a little extra at the end. In fact, goes second now, does Savalainen. Comes to pit lane immediately. It's going to have to get a move on that 100 BMW if they want to run one more lap. I think they just might make it after coming out of pit lane. But very close still between second all the way through fourth to this man, Junior McCall.
Yeah, Junior McCall and Morgan McCall, both of them that joined us for the Friday Rain Club International Series. It was great to see them coming back to the international scene. Of course, the two boys from South Africa. They were Junior was unfortunately robbed of a podium, wasn't he, in the final round because of well, we found out it wasn't actually load shedding, Jesse. We found out afterwards it was an ISP issue. So it wasn't actually load shedding, which is what we assumed it was because both of them went out at the same time. But that was later confirmed not to be the case. So surprisingly, for once, load shedding not at the expense.
There is a tire bale in the middle of the straightaway here.
This is the tire. Well, I hesitate to call it a barrier. This is the tire wall that you have on the inside of the first part of the Foggy S's down towards here, and you'll actually see down here on this little green bit of Astro, this is where the tire barrier sits typically, and it often does get knocked out of the way because, well, that's the racing line. That is the fastest way through, and you'll typically see that get taken out on the formation lap of a race, just because people like to get it out of the way so it's not a distraction on lap one when they come through. But yeah, it was one of the things I did notice because I had the privilege of getting early access to the British GT pack, courtesy of Kunos, and I obviously do thank them for that very much. And it was one of the things you did kind of find out fairly quickly as you went to lap around this circuit, which is, oh, that tyre barrier is not solid. And yes, the physics on it are hilarious, as it does tend to go for a few walks throughout the race, and sometimes ending up over the barrier, which is not safe for the spectators, but as long as no one gets harmed, I guess all is fair. Here's the look down towards the final corner as qualifying does come to an end. The provisional pole of Pedro Santos is pretty much pole position at this point in time, unless Junior or Morgan McCall can do anything about that. Looking at their lap times at the moment, though, Junior McCall not up on his lap time. Morgan McCall is up by a tenth, but realistically isn't going to gain another 3/10 to call it a day. Junior McCall does call it a day. There goes Morgan McCall around the final corner, up towards the timing line. Will they get close to it? Oh, they'll actually get a lot closer than I thought they would. They did find time out of the final corner, but still a quarter of a second down on the pole position time of Pedro Santos. And you were right, Jesse. In the end, the 26.3 crucial, as it is the pole position time for the pro class. In silver, the number 46 of Cam Prager, 8th overall, but pole position in silver, 0.8 of a second down on what was achieved in pro. And it is Clark, the 334, in provisional pole for the AM class, and that's 16th overall. But we have a short break as the cars line up on the grid, and we await the formation lap, some final setup tweaks, getting those pressures nice and dialed in. And, well, Jesse Lee, the clouds have rolled in.
Well, it is very British day here at Donington Park, And certainly this will change some of the strategy a little bit. The sun not baking the racetrack. 34 degrees C, however, still very warm indeed. 28 degrees ambient, completely cloudy, and we can guarantee that for at least the halfway point in the race. Doesn't necessarily look like rain, but it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to burn off the cloud layer either. But certainly something that all the teams will have to take into consideration. And we talked about Morgan McCall getting second. I was just going to brag on Sider, who wedged himself right in front of Savalainen for what was second at the time, but down to third. Savalainen probably won't care too much to just switch sides for the 100 BMW. The front couple of rows there. Don't think it's going to be a mystery of what manufacturer wins today, but I think there will be some surprises in the race. My questions are simple. Can Santos really keep that pace up for 1 hour? Who is going to be caught out by the racetrack? We haven't talked about that yet. One of the biggest problems about racing at Donington Park is when you go off here, you go off for an age. It is not as simple as going off at a modern circuit. Here, you have a crash, you have a proper crash, and it is, you basically have to hitchhike back to the racetrack most of the time. You're going to see a lot of dive bombs down to the hairpin. You're going to see a lot of mistakes in the chicane, and dare I say it, quite a few drive-throughs, a lot more than you would normally expect to see in a 1 hour race, because that is the nature of the racetrack. Ryan Gill, your predictions.
Oh dear. I was going to go into a segue about track limits, but predictions. Well, let's put it fairly simple, shall we? We have Pedro Santos and Morgan McCall lining up on the front row of the Pro Grid. Down into turn one, I'm not that experienced with what Pedro Santos is like in race conditions. He's fairly new, a new name to me at least, within the Racing Club International community. But, well, Morgan McCall, I've seen plenty of what he's capable of doing, and I wouldn't particularly like him going down side by side next to me into turn one. I'm pretty sure he'd be able to outbrake me any day of the week, and I'm pretty sure he can outbrake a lot of the drivers within ACC down into turn one. I think he'll have a decent shot at taking the lead of the race early on. As for whether he'll continue on to win, I don't know. It's going to be hard to call, but I tell you what, I'll go for Morgan McCall. I think he's got a decent chance of a win here, and throwing it up onto the front row of the grid on the last lap of the qualifying session. You know, it takes some clutch to pull that off, Jesse Lee, and that's something you do need to win races, and especially if you want to win championships as well. We're getting a very quick flyby of the grid here, as we're about a minute away from the start of the race. But to touch on your drive-through penalty quote, I mean, it doesn't really look like there are many places that you can get track limit warnings around here at Donington Park when you first look at the circuit, but they are quite strict around here. The chicane particularly is probably the biggest place you are going to look at those track limit warnings. The exit of turns 7 and turns 4 are particularly bad as well if you do track extend a lot out there. And I mean, also down at turn 1, you can get a couple of track limit warnings as well. So there are a few places to watch out for. The chicane is going to be the most important one, and that's the corner you've got to be, well, the most committed through as well. So if we're going to see anyone picking up drive-throughs, it's mostly going to be warnings through that section of the track. 10 seconds to go then, as Pedro Santos finishes the setup on his car. Down from the jacks it goes, and on to the start of the formation lap. We can see in the mirror there, just looking back. Love the view. And as he pulls away.
ACC kudos never change. That's brilliant. I don't think, is that even possible in any other sim? I don't think mirrors work like that in any other sim. Pretty sure that's unique.
I'm not exactly sure. I know a lot of modern games, should we say, don't do mirrors or reflective surfaces that well. But I'm not sure in the extent of sims. I would have to fact check that one, Jesse Lee, as you like to say.
Yeah.
But oh, here we go. Look at the product placement. Not sponsored by BMW, by the way. Just let's get that out of the way. That would be fantastic, but not sponsored by BMW. But the ultimate driving machine. And I mean, I do like the M6. I like the M8 as well. I like the M8 more than the M6, but I do like the BMW M6, and I feel it is a car that we don't really see enough. We got to see loads of it in the European Masters Championship, but it is nice to see a full field of BMW M6s coming around the circuit, and especially here at probably my favourite circuit in the world. I've got so many ideas, Jesse, for Master Cup championships, you know, that we have on Mondays, but I'm going to have to reserve myself from making a BMW Masters Cup soon because I have too many ideas already in the pipeline.
Well, folks, just a reminder, a 1-hour race, no pit stop required today. Nobody should have to come down pit lane unless they're serving a penalty. And we talked about the ACC assigned penalties. Well, there always is, as usual on Friday, the possibility of steward penalties. And as if on cue, the tire bale gets shot off.
Someone else is going to hit it in a minute. Yeah, there you go. It's not in a great spot.
And that's going to be out of here. So done and dusted on the pace lap. But as always, there is the possibility of RCI steward penalties. The fleet of stewards that we have here today. Thank you for being here, stewards.
I think it's 8 or 9, isn't it? Today? Do we have live
just
stewards?
About that. And the reason we have so many, of course, is because of the 30-plus cars as we get ready to go green here. Race 1 of 3 in the RCI Summertime Donington Championship. As everybody comes off the final turn, they're going to line up 2 by 2 around the corner as far as the eye can see, waiting for the green flag. It's further than you think it is, and the green flag is down, and Santos leads Morgan McCall down into turn 1. Everybody even as they look 3 wide down into the middle of the field, and they think better of it. 1 car already off by themselves. It's going to be tough getting back on. Minor contact there between Ertan and Savalainen, I think, and everybody else away cleanly. But don't get too comfortable. Oh, and there it is, as if on cue.
Oh no, Tom Bryan caught up in an accident down towards turn 4. That's at the old hairpin. There's been a couple of cars off at turn 1. We had, I think it was 4 cars in total, one of them just going wide, a couple caught up in an accident. Some incidents for the stewards to look at already, but up towards turn 8, some overtakes going on already. And look at this, Savalainen not having the greatest of starts, in 7th place at this point in time, trying to find a way past the likes of, that is Andy Boardman, isn't it? Oh, very close, but, well, you can't really go side by side into the chicane. It is almost a death sentence, and Savalainen now coming down towards the Melbourne Loop. Is he going to throw it on the inside of Andy Boardman here? Is he going to pull this off? He's going to keep it on the inside. I don't think there was contact between either of them, but Boardman will now have the inside line for the final corner and gets ahead with a better run as well, and that has to force Savalainen to go defensive, and he's Rosendahl into the back of the number 100. He'll back off and he won't gain the place. And Scrappy, and we've had 3 cars off at the final corner. We've had 3 cars off at the final corner towards the back of the field. It's all getting scrappy.
Oh, I got worse news for you, Ryan. They were off in the hairpin prior to that as well.
Oh,
this is what we're looking at. And 1 car just unfortunately having to sit there, and they got 4 and 5 wide, and it was a accordion effect. And by the time they got to the final corner, it all came back together, I think is what you're going to see here. Yes, indeed. 3 wide up front, and then 1 car completely missing the braking zone. And so often I am glad that I'm in this box and not the steward's box. It is going to take some time to sort through that. That was a mess and a half. Meanwhile, the race up front does continue. Santos leading McCall and Sider, Ertan and McCall the top 5, Boardman up to 6, and Savalainen has free fall through the field. Started 4th down to 7th or 8th now, and that is not what he would have wanted. It's going to be a long old road back up to where he started.
Look at the lead. Look at the lead. It's Morgan McCall. He's trying to put the pressure on Pedro Santos, and he's trying so hard. Couldn't really get a line into the first corner and had to sit behind for the entirety of the first lap. But Morgan McCall, for the ATK Academy entry, starting to pick up the pace a bit now and starting to put some pressure on Santos.
I don't know what's happened to the McCall family in the past month or so, but they went from decent midfielders to hounding people for the lead. We saw that in the previous Friday championship with Junior and now Morgan. Today, I don't know what happened to the McCalls, but everybody else has been put on notice. And with Morgan's not going to back off, okay? If there's one thing we know about the McCalls, they're not going to back off. And I don't know how much practice Santos has racing, Morgan, but if you are listening, don't expect any sort of quarter. You are going to get raced hard, so you might either get passed or you have a friend in your mirror the entire time. It's going to be interesting to see how Morgan plays this.
Oh, and he got a much better.
There. He's not willing to sit there. He's going to go down the inside. Oh, a little bit of a contact there, but he just runs it out as Santos switching up the line and is going to get chopped off here and will not have a line off the corner. And that's exactly what I was talking about. Morgan is not going to sit there. It's not going to happen.
Well, here is Junior McCall as well. This is the younger brother, and he's making way as well because he's just managed to get past Ertan, and he's up into 4th place. So there is a move up. Oh, car coming out of pit lane, and this is one of the problems of Donington Park. The pit lane exit, it's not in an ideal part. It's in the braking zone down towards turn 1, and unfortunately, one car just having to wait at the end of pit lane. I think someone maybe just forced wide onto the grass there and not too happy. That is Cam Prager, and I think that's McConnell behind, isn't it, in the 33? So McConnell not too happy and flashing the lights at the silver car up in front. Fortunately, not racing the silver car for position in class, obviously, and Nathan McConnell does lead in the AM class, has taken over that lead from Jason Clark, who took pole position earlier on, and this is Savalainen, who still hasn't made any headway on Andy Boardman's 6th place.
Yeah, and going back to Nate McConnell for a second, the reason he was so frustrated at the 46 was Clark, who started on pole, has not had a great start to this race. McConnell took the lead in AM, and because of that, now Clark is right behind McConnell. So that's why McConnell's frustrated, because he had a little bit of a lead, but whenever the 46 came by him, passed him at an inopportune time, lost a ton of time, and now is just barely in front of the pole sitting AM car. So frustration's coming out early. You can always tell how frustrated a driver is by how much they're flashing the lights. And this is Savalainen, who again qualified in the 4th place position, dropped all the way back to 7th. And I'm just sitting here trying to figure out if there's any tactile meaning to that. Maybe their car is set up for a longer run. Maybe their pressures are different, or maybe, quite unfortunately, they just missed it a bit. Here is McConnell and Clark. This is the battle for P1 in AM, and now McConnell all doing a bit of mirror driving, I would imagine.
Well, Jesse Lee, just to update you and some of the folks at home as well, we did say pre-race that, well, I said to the stewards, I hope you don't need the team of 8 that you have today. And, well, that seems to have backfired immediately. I just saw one of our new event managers, Bart Matcher, pop his head into the steward's box, and he just said, good luck, and walked off down towards the bar to go get a drink while he watches the rest of the race.
Bart Matcher never changed.
No, he's already embracing the spirit of an RCI event manager in the truest sense. And, well, we do wish some good luck to the stewards tonight. That was a particularly scrappy lap one. I think that has got to be probably one of the scrappiest lap ones I have seen in a long time, at least around here anyway. I know there's some opinions on a couple of the esports events that have gone on recently, but in terms of some of the races around here, that is not. I haven't seen one be that messy, should we say, on the first lap. But it is Donington Park. It is tight around here, and of course, when everyone is so close with these big BMW M6s at the start of the race, things can go wrong. But back to the battle in Am. McConnell still holding off Clark at this stage and doing a pretty good job of holding him off as well.
Well, it does become a battle of how long can you do that. I feel like Jason Clark has a little bit more pace, and I think you saw that in qualifying as well. Like you said, very difficult to pass here. You only really have one or two legitimate overtaking opportunities here that don't necessarily need the driver in front of you to make a mistake, but beyond that, it is very difficult indeed. And for McConnell, that mirror driving that he's going to have to do, and see again here going over to the near side of the track, but he's overcooked it. Look, he's overcooked it as McConnell. He didn't quite get it stopped. Flashing of the lights again. Jason Clark will not be looking in his mirror anymore as he retakes the lead in Am. And that's exactly what I was talking about. I would like to thank Jason Clark for making me look like I know what I'm doing.
I mean, McConnell, he was off the racing line, obviously going defensive to the inside line. And when you come into the hairpin, you want as wide an entry as you can. And obviously, as you force yourself to the inside line, it makes it more difficult to sight your braking zone, which is on the left-hand side of that corner. And Nathan McConnell just getting it wrong. Potentially as well, I don't know. Potentially, could you have said that was giving up the place? Essentially, it was potentially on purpose. I wouldn't like to think so, because obviously they're in the same class, but we never know. Tom Bryant, by the way, who was last, and he was last at the back of the field after an accident at the old hairpin on the very first lap. He had to wait until all the cars had gone past him so he could rejoin safely. Well, amongst all the chaos that happened on the rest of the first lap and a couple of accidents that have happened since, he has regained quite a few places, Jesse Lee. In fact, he was all the way up into 19th place. He's now, I think, up into 17th place once the timing sector updates itself. But Tom Bryant doing a very good job of recovering what was a very poor start to this race, possibly through no fault of his own. We await the steward's verdict on whatever incident he was involved in, but either way, still doing a good job to salvage what was an unfortunate start.
Well, speaking of the stewards, I have been given some information as we see Adalbert Ertan trying to get the 5th place away from Boardman, and I think he might just do it here. Boardman running wide, and look at Savalainen behind, getting all sorts of sideways, perhaps following Boardman there, and going off as well, but no harm, no foul. But Adalbert Ertan is going to get that 5th place position. He's Beamer Gang today. I wonder if he'll be Godzilla Gang next week. But going back to the stewards, I have been told by Phil Roberts that they have a backlog of incidents to deal with from that first lap. I think we assumed that, but
doesn't surprise me.
Expect a good many is what Phil Roberts is saying effectively there.
I would not be surprised if we saw the stewards do something that they have done on occasion when they get a lot of incidents in a short space of time, which is split up into teams. I believe we do have Connor is head steward tonight, but we do also have Jake Boswell in there, and Glenn as well, who is a head steward in training. So they have the ability to kind of split up into 2 groups, or possibly even 3 if need be, at this stage, if they want to get through a lot of incidents in a rapid-fire way, and we might possibly see them do that. But well, we'll leave the stewards to it. They know what they're doing. We've already actually seen a resolution to one of the penalties, by the way. It's a 5-second penalty for Nicholas Smith, and I can tell you what that one's for. That's lap 1, turn 9. So that is the chicane, and that is a 5-second penalty for cutting the S's and gaining a position. That one is fairly slam dunk, Jesse, and I don't really think they needed to review that one for very long.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, I think, was that Savalainen off again? No, yes, it was.
Off again, but he's on the back of Andy Boardman, even closer than he was last time. And
but what happened? Is there a car off in front of him? Yes,
oh, that wasn't
indeed.
Savalainen off in front. That was the 220.
No. Oh, yeah, you're right. It was, yeah.
That was Jack Laholm, who's down in 32nd place, and he's actually a lap down now. So that was one of the AM cars, unfortunately, who is towards the back of the field. Unfortunately, just getting caught up in the pro battle. And it does happen sometimes if you have a very bad start to the race and possibly have to pit for damage. It's entirely possible you do find yourself with the pro field right on the back of your tail early on in the race, and it can create a few tense moments through some of these corners.
Yeah, I love turn 1 here at Donington because the quickest line is to get on the pit outline and arc your turn into 1. It's very different. You don't see that many places. It's also incredibly dangerous as well. But of course, drivers will use all of the road that they're allotted, and often more so. But Savalainen just struggling here a bit, but struggling as he is, he's still right behind Boardman Ertan and Junior McCall. Like, they're all here together. In fact, they're fighting one another up in front. It's going to be side-by-side stuff. Boardman is going to just barely squeak that out. And just because you pass doesn't mean... Yeah, just because you pass somebody doesn't mean that you're going to drive away all of the time. And a good battle here. This all for the 5th place spot. Nothing doing out front. Santos leads McCall by 1.8 seconds. Pedro is pulling away from Morgan McCall, and Sider, who is 5 seconds behind now, that lead group in 3rd. And you have 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th all racing for the 4th place spot. Actually, it's a bit more... It's 3rd now as well. Yeah, it's a bit more than that. It's 3rd through 8th, all in one picture. And that's kind of what you expect when you go single make racing.
It is. It's one of the reasons why the Porsche Cup is usually so exciting. Unless Mike Noble's driving, in which first place is already decided and everyone fights over second. But regarding, single make series, it's why they are typically so competitive, and well, it's what we're seeing here. The skill level of a lot of these drivers very similar to one another, and what will annoy Jonas Savalainen is that Ertan ahead made a mistake, Boardman got through, but Savalainen was not able to follow, and that will frustrate him because he had the speed over Andy Boardman and he was putting plenty of pressure on him, couldn't find a way through. But now that Andy Boardman is past Ertan, kind of looks like Savalainen didn't have the pace and he's lost it through the chicane. It's so easy to do. Manages to save it. Very well done to avoid going into the wall. We're going to see an onboard perspective here. Where does he lose it? And it's coming out on the exit. Yep. Too aggressive on the curb on the exit. So easy to do. And in fact, even easier to do if your setup isn't your suspension, should we say, for the curbs isn't set up particularly around that curb. You do have to use the curbs a lot around here at Donington Park, but that is the curb in particular that can send your car flying off into the wall. We've got someone off at the final corner. Not entirely sure who that was, but Savalainen, a frustrating start, has just got slightly worse because now they're not only off the back of the pro field, they found themselves behind a couple of the silver drivers that they're not fighting for a position for.
Yeah, just absolutely uncharacteristic for Savalainen. I have to feel at this point, based on what we've seen from him this year, that he just missed a setup or something. Like, he had it set up pretty decently, you would have to say, for qualifying, but in the race, he just hasn't had the pace. The car hasn't looked comfortable. The suspension surely isn't set up to take the curbs, and feel like they just maybe missed it a little bit. Unknown if that's a weather-related thing or perhaps just a lack of time in the car, but one way or another, Savalainen is going to be happy to not have to drive this car next week, and that is the silver lining of this mini Donington Summertime Championship thing we're doing. If you don't like the car, just wait a week, it'll change.
It will, and if you don't like the car again, well, I'll wait a week again because it will change, but I can't guarantee you'll like the final car of the season either. And, well, here is the battle for the lead in silver. Battles going on all around the circuit, and it is Christian Camprega chasing down Eraser at this point in time. Camprega, who started on pole for the silver class, has lost the lead, similar to how Jason Clark had started on pole in AM and then had lost the lead to McConnell. So similar starts to the race for both of those classes, but just in the way that Clark managed to regain the lead in AM through a mistake from the leader, will the likes of Camprega be able to recover this silver lead?
Well, the racer here has done a great job of getting into the lead here. Camprega, though, looking down, Savalainen looking down the inside of Camprega, I should say, trying to get that position back. That's one spot back for Savalainen, but still has one silver driver left to go. Of course, you only score points in your class here. There is no overall championship. This is a class championship, so Savalainen will not gain more points from gaining the 9th place position back, but he is, of course, one step closer to being up towards the front of the field. What happened to Rosendahl? Was that a potential contact there made? I think it might have been. You don't usually spin left unless there's contact.
I think that's 2 into 1 doesn't go in the chicane, and our producer just saying that might have been a lapped car involved, but we don't entirely know. I mean, I'm sure the stewards will know. they'll get around to it at some point.
And if that was a lapped car, they won't appreciate that very much.
No, they won't at all. I have been told by Phil Roberts, by the way, he just, flew a paper plane out the window from the steward's box up to the comms box, and he said to me that they're getting through the penalties. There's going to be quite a few coming through over the next minute or two, and he said that a lot of them were fairly easy ones to judge. So quite a few incidents, but not really any tricky ones for the stewards to go through. So they are going to get through these fairly quickly, and in fact we've already seen the first one come out, but we do have a few more to go. So I think once they've all been quick fired out to the correct driver, we'll give you, all of you at home, a little bit of a rundown as to who's who in the penalty corner for the lap 1 and 2 antics that we saw earlier. And I mean, Jesse, we did kind of expect it to be a bit scrappy when you have 3 different skill levels on the track at the same time on what is quite a tight circuit on lap 1.
Yeah, we talked about it in qualifying. We talked about it on the pace lap, and it's just something you expect. Anybody who's ever raced here knows that lap 1 here, it's not quite Monza T1, but it is very difficult, especially the more cars you have. It becomes a bit of an issue. Traffic's always an issue here. We've already seen traffic play a factor on the lead lap cars. And of course, you see the penalties starting to roll in. One thing earlier, I don't know if we mentioned, a racing incident judged between the 12 and the 197. That was actually on lap 2. And of course, Ryan Gill told you about the 5-second penalty for the 666 for cutting the S's gaining position. 15 seconds for car 137, making contact with the rear of the 42, taking him out. And that's why Tom Bryant was dead last. Warning for car 137 for the same incident. And 5-second penalty for car 46, making contact with the 334, causing him to lose traction and cede 2 positions. And these are all lap 1 penalties and all before turn 10. So that's how far they've gotten, for those of you wondering at home. But one thing I am surprised about is they said that it was actually fairly easy. I I felt that it would be a bit more hard because they were 3 and 4 wide, but perhaps
I,
cause and effect?
well, I mean, they've got to turn 10, which is the exit of the chicane, Jesse. We saw the hairpins, turns 11 and 12, were the particularly messy ones, so they might spend a bit more time on those ones. I do wonder down towards turn 11 and 12, but we will see. Hopefully this is the worst of it that the stewards will see tonight. Everyone has sort of spread out quite a bit now. A lot of people in different bubbles around the circuit, as you can see via the track map. But that doesn't mean there aren't battles going on, because there are plenty of battles going on.
Oh,
That's
Savalainen
Savalainen
again!
again. Oh, and is that involved with another car, or is this Savalainen making a mistake on his own? I would like to think this is a mistake on his own, judging by this. Yep, exit of the old hairpin, touches the grass, doesn't ease off the throttle, spins around, almost catches the car behind.
Code Brown moment there for the car behind, just barely squeaking that one out.
You know what that's going to be, Jesse Lee? That's
Yeah?
probably going to be at least a warning for not holding brakes.
Perhaps so, but I think we can confirm Savalainen's handling woes there. I also think Savalainen a little bit frustrated with how the race has gone. They're pushing, they're going a little bit too hard, and that's very easy to do here. You have to drive within your limits. This track will punish you if you don't do that. You always feel, this is one of those places you feel like you can get a little extra at. I can assure you, you can't. You have to drive within the limits and the confines, because if you don't, stuff like that can and will happen to you. It's a very unforgiving race circuit, and it always has been ever since you used to race through farm gates.
You always feel like you're on the limit of what the car can do around here.
Yes.
Which is something that a lot of people don't realize the first time they come to Donington Park, is you do have to be quite committed through a lot of these corners, and a lot of them are much quicker than they first appear, as we've just seen a drive-through penalty come through from the steward's office. That's for the car 130. Oh, there's someone off at the old hairpin again. Not entirely sure who that is, but someone was off there. I saw a yellow flag. They have got rolling again. But the penalty that came out, the drive-through for car 130, that was a lap 1, turn 1 incident. They've just got around to finishing, and that was involving the 933, the 130, and the 12. 130 makes contact with the 933, who hits the 12. So a double car takeout in that incident, and well, that's a drive-through penalty in the steward's books, and lap 1 as well. So they're a bit harsher than usual, and a few more penalties to come, because we haven't seen the resolution of the turn 11 or turn 12 penalties yet on lap 1. But they are starting to get through them. We've got another car off, and that's after the old hairpin. That's down at Starkey's Bridge. That was the 79, I believe, of Jacobson.
Yeah, you're starting to see that old hairpin and Starsky's. You're starting to see people start to go off there. The tire pressure is coming up, the handling going away a little bit, and of course near the halfway point in the race, as Muhammad Ali will serve their drive-through penalty and get back out there. But it will actually, I'm not sure. I think they will hang on to a AM podium position. In fact, they will. They'll come out about 16th or 17th, but still third in their class, as Ataberk Ertan finds themselves in a battle with several cars, some of which are not on the same lap, as Ertan trying to get around Cedar, but nothing doing at this stage.
And that was Jakobsen in the background, the number 79 that did go off after the old hairpin was on the grass down at Starkey's. And it's so easy to do, especially if you have a car that is prone to understeer on corner exit. Very, very easy to get that corner wrong, and it's one of the setup areas that you do focus on around this circuit, making sure that the car doesn't understeer on the exit, particularly of turn 4. But looking back towards the lead of Silver and the battle for the lead of Silver,
Cam Prager wants this lead back.
He does, but he has a 5-second penalty to his name as well. So a racer at this point, as much as he could let him go, he also wants to keep him behind, because if he can keep him behind, he guarantees the fact that he's going to win the race on merit and not through time penalty. If he lets him through, it's entirely possible that the number 46 could go 5 seconds up the road in the next 32 minutes. So at this point in time, despite the 5-second penalty the 46 carries, the 699 has no reason to just let them through. And
he's going for it!
Down into the chicane, and just having to ease out of it. Camprager just realised that he wasn't really going to fit it down the inside there without making contact. Tried to save it for the Melbourne loop. Will get really close to the back, but just not able to capitalise, and now down towards the final corner. They won't have the run onto the inside, and they'll have to wait again, but very, very close.
You really shouldn't be able to read the M badge in the kidney bean grill if you're using the rear-facing camera of the car. You shouldn't be able to do that, but we could very clearly see the M badge on Camprager's car. And these are the games that we play in motorsport. It's very interesting to watch. It's frustrating to be a part of, I can assure you that. But the 699 doing exactly what they need to do by keeping Camprager behind them, and Camprager trying to very sort of almost hesitantly, aggressively get around the leading silver car. I reckon Camprager can gap the 699 by at least 5 seconds. I'm pretty sure Racer knows that and is trying to keep that from happening. And this, by the way, was nearly 2 seconds about 15 minutes ago. It is now a dead heat between Morgan McCall and Santos as they go side by side over and over again. And McCall is going to have to settle back in for second place, at least for the time being. And I'm being told this is by virtue of Santos making a mistake.
It is. He lost a second on that lap to Morgan McCall, and that's with both of them holding each other up through the 2 hairpins at the end of the circuit. So he definitely lost those 2 seconds at some point on the previous lap. The number 54 has gone off at turn 1. I can see yellow flags down there. But Morgan McCall is right behind them now, and they've got traffic in front of them. And this is where Donington Park really does become a challenge, when you're battling for a position and you've got to navigate around traffic. And when they're in the same sort of car, should we say, I was going to say class, but they are in different classes, but they are in the same car effectively, single make series. It does become difficult. And the flashing of the lights, move out of the way, is the message from the leaders. And Stefan Miller will be the next target in their sights that they will be asking to remove himself from their view. And that's gone deep. That's gone deep. Will this allow Morgan McCall, or will it give the better exit to Pedro Santos? It's given him a better exit. He will salvage it coming into the final corner. And Stefan Miller, he's going to get well out of the way.
Well, Stefan Miller there just absolutely saying, okay, I don't want any of this. I'm going to go ahead and back out, and rightfully so. I don't think I've ever seen that, by the way. You had both the leaders, I call that co-opetition right there. Both the leaders flashing the cars in front, like, look, we're in the middle of something here. We're having a bit of an argument. If you wouldn't mind awfully making a little bit of room. Expertly navigated by all parties involved, of course. And the battle does continue as Morgan McCall, you can tell how aggressive he's being.
And that's the understeer that I mentioned, that is one of the factors of this car, well, not really this car, but this track, you need to watch out for if your car does understeer off from the old hairpin. It can punish you. I mean, Morgan McCall got away with it there, but we saw Jonas Savalainen not get away with it. And it can go both ways. Andy Boardman up into 4th place, and he's right on the back of Junior McCall. Both the McCalls in the podium positions. Junior McCall's got traffic in front of him. He wants to get through. Oh, someone's off at the chicane. Is that the 666 in the barrier?
It is. It is the 666, Ryan.
Oh no, it is. It's Nicholas Smith off and into the barrier at the chicane. That's easy to do. Seen it happen plenty of times, and there is heavy damage on that car. It's going to have to come back into the pit lane, but further forward, the battle for third place not calming down at all, and, well, the blue flagged car ideally going to move out of the way, but I don't think so. They're not going to defend, but they're also not going to make it entirely easy for the leaders to get through. There we go. The number 26 does go wide eventually to let them have some breathing room, but my word, first and second, almost nothing between them. Third and fourth, almost nothing between them at this stage. And both of these battles involving a McCall, but one doing the attacking, the other doing the defending.
Yeah, this is very interesting. We've seen the McCalls get onto the pro podiums before. Like I said, very fierce competitors and also incredibly fast. They've put a lot of these pro drivers on notice as of late, and they've certainly shown that today. They didn't necessarily qualify at the tippy top of the field, but they're competing there today. And this is still the battle for first place. Santos and Morgan McCall racing for that P1 spot. Andy Boardman behind them by about 9 seconds on the rear of Junior McCall for that final podium spot in pro. Clark leading in AM, quite some margin over McConnell now. And Eraser still leading over Thorpe. And the 666, of course, we talked about having issues. And yeah, something happened to the 46 as well, as Camp Rager is now third in silver and back to 11th. Did we catch that, what happened to the 46?
No.
Well, we do have some penalties as well that have come in. We're going to see, is this what happened? Oh, yes! The 46 in the wall there, all by themselves. Now, you have to make up your own opinion. Was there contact that led to that? That, again,
It's easy to go off at turn one on your own, though.
It is
going back to
indeed.
that understeer issue that I mentioned at turn four. It's something that can affect turn one as well. But here's Morgan McCall, and there is a poor chicane from Pedro Santos, and he's got no room to defend at all. And Morgan McCall will take the inside line into the Melbourne loop, and he's going to make sure that there's firmly no gap on the inside line. Takes the lead of the race here and has done so very nicely indeed. And we can have, as a replay here with Morgan McCall, this replay going back quite a ways as well. This is up towards turn 7, and we can just see here, look at that, how much he gains. Pedro Santos
is just loose. Yeah, that car is just loose in front. I don't know if maybe went a little bit too hard early in the race, probably burned some tire out there, overheated them, maybe a little bit too much on the brakes. But here we're about to see it, Ryan.
Yeah, this is the mistake. Pedro Santos, I think he just brakes too late here, and he just misses the apex. And it's so easy to miss that first apex. Look at Morgan McCall wrestling the wheel to try and make sure he doesn't run into the back of him. But fantastically done, and that is one of those occasions where the pro drivers do it best, don't they? They just pile on the pressure onto a driver ahead. You know, I've said it before, some of these drivers, they are like hunters. They love to just put on the pressure lap after lap after lap. And eventually a mistake comes through, they capitalize on it, they take the lead, and look at this. Morgan McCall starting to put the foot down now, almost a second gap, although that gap is going to close up because he has just gone deep into the chicane. There's contact with one of the back markers, and Pedro Santos, I think the back marker going wide hadn't realized that Pedro Santos had gone wide on the exit as well. So, I mean, the back marker not really doing anything wrong. It was the 222. It was Alan Gooch, I think. But I think the 222 not really doing anything wrong there. Went wide to make sure they would go through. Pedro Santos just didn't have an ideal line through the corner, was wide on the exit, and of course that slowed him down, and the two cars just, came to meet at the middle. But that has only empowered Morgan McCall, who now has a 2-second gap on the man he has just dethroned from the lead of the race.
And give credit to both Morgan and Pedro for that. That was expert racing for the past 30 minutes or so. That gap had come in and out as there's a car in the wall. I think that's the 222, and that is the 222 of Alan Goosh in the wall. But give a call to Morgan and Pedro there. Excellently clean, like pinpoint accurate driving, a spectacular battle, and a nice pass there at the end. And of course, Pedro Santos would wish it went the other way, obviously, but rather beside the point. Like you said, the pros just do it the best. They pile on the pressure, they drive pinpoint accurate, and excellent battle there. 40 minutes in the making, new leader of the race. And now Santos dealing with whatever's ailing his car. If I had to guess, it's just the longer run not agreeing with the setup of that particular car, and Morgan's car has done the opposite. It's come to the driver of the 540. Meanwhile, Junior McCall in third place has kept Andy Boardman at bay. This has pretty much been the gap for the past 15 minutes at this point. No real gain between the two of them. It looked like Boardman kind of ran up on him a little bit. Oh, and who's that? Was that? Oh, everybody's off there. Junior McCall was off there a little bit. There was another car off as well.
And he's off, and this is going to allow Boardman to come around the outside.
He's going to go wide. He's going to go wide.
And it's
contact? Just so hard. I didn't see any, if there was.
Well, our producer is telling us that he doesn't think there was any contact. So maybe it was just getting on the curb on the outside of the entry into turn 7. Andy Boardman, unfortunately, couldn't capitalize on a mistake from the likes of Junior McCall. And I've just noticed that tyre wall that was in the chicane on the formation lap was knocked all the way towards the barrier, and it's now sitting on the side of the circuit. So someone's gone into the barrier after the chicane, and they've knocked it back towards the circuit.
That's excellent detective work there, Ryan.
And we also have the car 54 off at Starkey's Bridge, although they have rejoined the track now. Quite a few drivers finding it difficult out on the exit of turn 3 today. And, that stretching not just from the AM or the silver drivers, but all the way up to the pros as well. I've seen Savalainen go off at least once there today, and, we've seen both the McCalls go quite wide through turn 3, on the exit of turn 3 as well, and here is Andy Boardman. That's just about right. That's where you want the car to be, just on the edge of the curb, but not quite going onto the grass. And, Andy Boardman now has quite the task on his hands. He has to close in 3.2 seconds to Junior McCall.
Yes, indeed. You have to start that chase all over again as continued racing here in the back, as we have had quite a few incidents reviewed, and they are as follows. A warning for car 220 for sending it in the corner on the 12, but the 220 spun himself, so only a warning. I believe this is an error. It's written as a 15-second penalty for the 933, but the explanation says the 12 spins the 933. So I'm assuming that actually is a 15-second penalty for the 26, who did not return the position. Drive-through penalty for car 223 takes out the 666 AM car. That's the 666 who's had further incidents. This is all still lap 1, by the way. Warning for car 233 for the same incident. 15-second penalty for car 55, dive bombing the 223, making contact and causing them to take out the 197 in the process. And the 55 was also was considered at fault for all of those cars going off. The penalty, of course, elevated due to turn 1. That's going to be that 3 and 4 wide into the final hairpin there. We were waiting for that, so the 55 was deemed at fault for that. I was wondering if that would be a 15 or a drive-through. 15 for the 55. And a warning for car 14 for avoidable contact. And I'm not sure if they're done with turn 1, but or not, excuse me, lap 1, but they've ran out of corners at least. They're on the last one. Racing continues here as Santos back out in front of Morgan McCall. Actually, it's Junior McCall up there now. Morgan McCall down into third place. I was reading the penalties out and I missed that. What happened there to cause that, I wonder? Morgan McCall, who had just recently taken the lead in the last 5 minutes, now back down to third place. And now Andy Boardman, who is still racing a McCall, just happens to be racing a different one, as they all have to navigate traffic here. And here's Ertan behind Sider again. You know what they say, all things that drift apart come back together. But I'm still wondering what happened. Santos got the lead. What happened to Morgan McCall? Certainly an off of some kind. But back down to third place. Adalbert Ertan, though, has been working on Sider, it feels like, this entire race. But now back together again. What can Ertan do? As I must say, for the most part, lap traffic has been an absolute treat here, getting out of the way when they can.
Yeah, and of course, getting out the way it's easier said than done at some of these corners. There are a particular few parts of the track where you can do it down towards both of the hairpins. It is quite easily done. You have a nice, stretch of tarmac there where you can move out of the way. But it's not so easy at some of the other corners, like say down towards turn 1. It's not easy throughout all of sector 1 really to move out of the way. We have a replay here between the 130. I believe that's Stefan Miller they're just getting past. Or is that Mark Brown? It's always hard to tell which of the Tenacious Tortoise cars they are, because they both use the exact same livery, and, well, they're in the same car today. Increasingly difficult to find the difference between the tortoises, but either way, we'll find a way.
Right, as we do a little bit of radio RCI, right? Do you ever get the feeling that some of these drivers they're involved in the meta? They're trying to mess with us a little bit. We know that some of the staff do that, but some of the other drivers might try to do that as well, right? They try to do the Too Fast, Too Furious identical car thing. It's like I feel like sometimes drivers aren't having enough fun racing. They got to mess with us a little bit too. Well, racing does continue here. Santos has been afforded an 8-second lead on Junior McCall, who now leads Morgan McCall. It's still a McCall double podium, but just in the reverse order as it's been all race long. What we are watching is the battle for 5th place. Sider and Ertan racing it out for 3rd. Just a reminder that this is an all Donington Summer Series. We'll be here for the next 2 weeks. Next week, the same track, the same drivers, but in Nissan GTRs. And the week after that, McLaren 720s to wrap up the mini summer series. We thank you all for being here, and we invite you to like, subscribe, hit that bell. We'll be back with you tomorrow night for a brand new Night Owl season. I can't wait to get going with that. You're going to love it. And of course,
Summer
we'll be with
season.
you again. Indeed. We'll be back with you on Monday for round 2 of the NSX Championship as well. Watched a little bit of that this week, Ryan. Excellent show.
It was very exciting, actually. I mean, the silver battle coming down to just a few tenths of a second between the leaders, and obviously a new pro driver kind of asserting themselves right into the mix. We kind of expected Valentin Barrier to run away with that race. Was not the case. But yeah, it's there's plenty of racing action coming up, and well, we might have the return of the GT4 Championship fairly soon as well. And hopefully at some point in the future, we'll be able to broadcast the Race Room Championships that have started up. Of course, we had the first Race Room Championship conclude this week. That was the World Touring Car Championship one. We have a Silhouette series starting up as well. So if you're interested in Race Room and the Silhouette cars, you can go sign up for that. The link to all of that in the RCI Discord as well. That's going to be hosted on Sim Racing GP. It's obviously a one-off event in the WTCR cars at the Nordschleifer, I think, as well, coming up on the next Tuesday, the break week between the Race Room Championships. Hopefully we can stream one of those series at some point, because there is some fantastic racing and some fantastic car combinations that you can do within Race Room. But that is a talk for another day. Back to the present day, and Jordan Daly trying to find a way through Nathan McConnell. And these are two drivers that know each other, but racing in different classes for this championship. And at the moment, Daly would, well, he'd like to get in front of McConnell, wouldn't he, to try and close down the gap to Tom Bryant. But that is quite a gap he's got. I believe it's about 7 seconds, isn't it, between the 23, 7.7, there you go, between the 23 and the 42. So going to be difficult for Daly to close that back up, although, there we go, McConnell has made a mistake and will concede the position to Daly, so the 197 moves up into 14th place overall. And that does mean that they can now commence their charge to see if they can catch Tom Bryant, who currently sits 4th in the silver class.
Nothing of value really lost for McConnell, to be honest. Didn't lose any points or positions in class. Additional penalty coming in. They are not done with lap 1. Lap 1, turn 11 still. Incident involving the 931 and the 17. 5-second penalty for the 931 for a forceful overtake on the 17. But only 5 seconds there. Judging by the verbiage that the stewards used, I think it's safe to say nobody spun. It was just a rough overtake on the opening lap. Andrew Berg in chat says, glad I'm watching and not racing. I'd have a heart attack out there with this much action. Well, I feel like you're right on there, Berg. I think some of the drivers have indeed had a heart attack out there. There's been a ton of close calls with this much traffic.
Yeah, there have been quite a few close calls, and I mean, I imagine it is hectic out there. Ooh, I've just seen a drive-through come out for track limits for the 666. I did see one earlier. I believe it might have been the 79 that I saw one for earlier, but we've seen another one come out now for the 666. So a couple of drive-through penalties for track limits that you did allude to earlier on, Jesse. And, well, would you look at this? Andy Boardman is, well, he's closing up. And I've just realised, Jesse, how long ago did this happen? The McCalls have switched places.
Yeah, so I talked about that earlier, and we don't have an answer for that. Morgan McCall was leading the race and then was 8 seconds behind Junior McCall. Of course, it's not that now, but I have no idea how that happened. Junior, by the way, speaking of 8 seconds, Junior was behind Pedro Santos by 8 seconds. That gap coming down, but unfortunately, fleeting time remaining, a little less than 10 minutes to go as this race continues to baffle us. I want to know, even if we have to figure it out post-race, I got to know what happened to the 540. My best guess is they either lost it on their own like so many others have, or lap traffic forced a mistake. One way or another, Morgan McCall down to third, Junior up to second, and Junior, of course, catching Pedro Santos, but I've kind of been doing the maths, and there's no way he has enough time to catch him unless Pedro Santos goes off again. Keep in mind, Santos has been off the track a few times himself. So, barring a mistake, I don't think it's possible, but that will not deter Junior McCall, I wouldn't imagine. And meanwhile, Ertan and Sider still going at it for the 5th place position, and Boardman, who has caught Morgan McCall, still going at it for the 3rd place position. Eraser in the 699 still leading in silver, has about 10-second gap over Thorpe in the 920. And Clark, who started on pole, lost the pole position and had to ride around Nate McConnell for a while, has retaken a commanding lead in AM with Camprager in 3rd in silver. And even further back, you have McConnell 2nd in AM and Muhammad Ali in 3rd in AM as well. And in between all of those drivers I just mentioned, a litany of penalties. Here's the battle for 3rd. And here is what happened to leader Morgan McCall. Morgan McCall was leading the race here by several seconds. And was that contact there with the lap car? I think it might have been.
It was definitely contact. The 931 into the back of the leader. Rather unfortunate. And the 931 down in 19th place overall. They're in, what is that, 4th place in AM. Already with a 5-second penalty to their name. That's going to get worse. We've also had news that car 137 has been disqualified by race control.
Wow.
And that's not one that we see often. Not in endurance races and not in championships. We very rarely see a driver disqualified mid-race. So that is a hard one to take, but the stewards have clearly seen enough from car 137 today and have said, enough's enough. The car has to park it now.
To briefly explain for the folks at home, you get 6 license points, and every time you get a penalty, it adds to your license points. So more severe penalties carries more license points. Consider it the same as your driver's license. You get points on your license for doing traffic violations, right? Well, 15-second penalty for the 137 for taking out the 933. 5-second penalty for the 222, taking out the 17. 15-second penalty for the 137 for taking out the 17. And that put the 137 over the license point limit, which is an automatic disqualification. And also a drive-through for the 222 for contact with the 12. And that is all caught up on the penalties, and those all happened after lap 1 as we continue this battle for the 3rd place position.
And as the battle continues in the last few minutes of the race now, Morgan McCall, who... It's always bittersweet, isn't it, when you're leading a race? Not that I've done that many times in my sim racing career, but when you're leading a race, you get taken out by someone who is effectively not in your race. I mean, a car in a different class, completely different class, and someone who is a lap down on you as well. It's kind of hard to swallow, isn't it, that you had a solid lead on 2nd place, and now you come into the last few minutes of the race and you are essentially fighting to hold on to what is a podium place. Andy Boardman won't care. He'll just see the car of Morgan McCall up in front. Ooh, and that is assertive. Down towards the Melbourne Loop. Morgan McCall does not want to be held up by any of the cars that they're in the process of lapping, but I think maybe by just diving in harshly on the inside. Is that Junior McCall? No, it's not.
It was a black car. It looked like
it was a black car.
It did,
but not Junior McCall. I think that was one of the back markers. But slight moment of panic. But Andy Boardman now, as I was saying, right on the back of Morgan McCall, and the traffic has not been kind to the South African.
No, it's just been a frustrating day. Certainly, the stewards will look at the 540 incident, and I would imagine a very stiff penalty awaits the offending driver. It's bad enough to take out a car on the lead lap. It's even worse if you take out the leader. I don't think they will take that into account in the steward's box. A takeout is a takeout to them regardless, but even still, It's a sinking feeling, and it's a frustrating one for Morgan McCall. And the McCalls are here, and they have a lot of pace, and probably should have won this race. But again, there is a lot of things that are out of your control in racing. If you knew the outcome before you ran the race, why would you even run the race? It's part of it. It's almost gambling in a way, except you're betting on yourself, which is very fun activity racing, and certainly would take the fun out of it if you didn't know, or if you did know where you were going to finish. As Andy Boardman getting as close as you like on the back of Morgan as we enter the final 2 laps of the race. 2 laps remaining. And what about Pedro Santos? Let's talk about Pedro Santos. Had the lead, had the pole, didn't have the pace halfway through this race, gave up the lead to Morgan McCall, was some 6 seconds behind Morgan McCall, passes him, sees him sitting on top of this hill, backwards, passes him, and now is cruising to victory again. What must Pedro Santos be thinking?
He's thinking he's used up all the luck in the world at this point. And sometimes you do have races like that where it just seems like things are on your side. And well, you're going to have races in the future where everything feels like it's going against you. It's just the nature of how luck seems to sway. But well, there's the saying that you make your own luck, and that is true to an extent. And maybe Pedro Santos has made his own luck today. A man that hasn't really made his own luck today is Morgan McCall, but I'm not sure you could blame him for that. Andy Boardman has had a couple of moments as well in this race in which he'll be quite frustrated for, but both of them have the ability to duke it out for 3rd place now, and this is the final lap. Does Andy Boardman have the pace? Can he find a way through Morgan McCall? I said that Morgan McCall, he's a difficult driver to race against. I've seen plenty of his work in the South African racing leagues. Coming over into Europe now, he's proving he has pace. He's not easy to get past. He's not easy to defend from, as Pedro Santos found out earlier on in the race. And at the moment, well, all efforts focusing rearwards as Andy Boardman, well, both of them go wide.
Exiting the track. Just exiting the track. Look, it doesn't matter here. If you have track limits left to give, you can't wait. You know, what are you going to do? Take them home with you? No, you're going to use them, and getting every bit of the road, trying to get on the gas as quickly as you possibly can. As Andy Boardman, he has at best 2 more opportunities, but I don't think he even has that. The gap is just too big. Morgan has run about as perfect of a lap as you could imagine, but he's going to have one more shot down here at the end of the hairpin. What will Andy Boardman do? He looks like, for my money, he's just a little bit too far back, and in fact is late on the brakes. He's going to try and diamond off the corner, but it's still just too big of a gap for Morgan McCall. Pedro Santos is going to have the roller coaster day of his life, but he's going to win the opening round of the Donington Summer Championship in the number 8. Junior McCall, with an excellent run, will finish 2nd. Morgan McCall 3rd. Boardman is the top 4, and behind them, Cedar Ertan is the top 6 finishers in pro, and the 699 Verasser will win in silver. Thorpe 2nd in that class in the 920. Savalainen 8th, and Clark, after all of his early lap dramas in the 334, will win after all in AM. And Cam Prager in the 46 will be frustrated and wondering what happened to his race. 3rd in silver and 10th overall. Elsewhere, McConnell 2nd in AM, and Ali 3rd in that class. What an incredible race. Battles throughout, podium battle right down to the end. I think we're going to get more of the same next week. Ryan Gill, sum it up for us.
I don't think there is an easy way to sum it up. There was all sorts of dramas on lap 1 involving cars from pretty much every class, and I think a couple of those lap 1 incidents maybe still being reviewed by the stewards. It's going to be a long night, I feel, for them. Post-race penalties more than likely going to have to come out, but we did see plenty of action. We saw, well, pretty much all of the leaders, or all of the pole sitters, lose their lead at some point throughout the race. And, well, 2 of them regained the lead, but unfortunately for Camprega in the silver class, they'll finish 3rd. They will not reclaim the lead of their race. We saw Morgan McCall, unfortunately, taken out of the lead of the race through a car that was a lap down to him. But that will be Pedros Santos's gain. And, well, both McCalls on the podium will be something to keep in mind and something for them to take away from this race. It is also going to be an element of frustration for them. Either way, it's a great start, I feel, in terms of action to the Friday Donington special. It definitely has been an interesting one to watch, and of course we will do it all over again in 7 days' time, but with the Nissan GTR, and then of course 7 days after that we will wrap up the short mini-season with the McLaren 720S cars. That's going to be incredibly exciting to watch. We also have up for you tomorrow, Jesse Lee alluded to it earlier, we have the Night Owl summer season starting. Interesting championship on offer for you, or they're going to be using all of the old cars, the 2018 cars, for the Night Owl season. And it's going to be fantastic to watch. I'm excited to see if there's any Lamborghini Rex, or sorry, Reuter Rex cars out there, and if there's any McLaren 650S cars as well. Love that car. So if you want to see some of the old cars duke it out for the Night Owl summer season, you can tune in tomorrow evening. And, well, if you want to look forward to some more single make series action, you have the NSX Summer Cup happening on Mondays. We head to Zolder. I've heard it's very, very hot out in Belgium at the moment. The drivers are, should we say, finding creative ways to cool down the tyres, involving icebergs and all sorts of different ice machines and loads of different suggestions. But we do have the NSX Cup resuming on Mondays and plenty of exciting action there as well. But we will be back for this championship on Friday. 7 days' time, we return here with the Nissan GTRs. Look forward to that. Big thank you to our partners who make all of this possible here at Racing Club International, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. Of course, AK Informatica, they host the servers that we run this series on. Driver 61, if you want to get yourself some cheap driver coaching, you can go down and choose use our discount code in the description. Get yourself 25% off access to their Sim Racing Academy. It's a wonderful resource to learn and get faster. And then, of course, Fanatec as well. You can check them in the link in the description. Of course, supplier of some of the best sim racing equipment in the business. Anyway, that's going to be it from myself, Jesse Lee, Mike Jones behind the cameras, and the stewarding team who are still very, very hard at work. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the start of the Night Owl summer season.